You may have heard of rotation shifts. A lot of people like to compare. You have things like 36 hours, 12, 24, 24, 16-hour shift. What the frick are people talking about? I don't understand any of these numbers. I personally hate this because this just makes me feel like the game has high commitment and it'll make me burn out from the game a lot easier. Let's try to understand rotations without all these random numbers. When you talk about rotations, it's unfortunately the concept of micromanagement, whereby there's different ways that you can rotate people. A lot of you are in these two categories, where you rotate operators when you die and you don't know what you're rotating. Well, by now, since I've taught you about productivity, you probably won't be here anymore, and instead you'll be here, where you rotate your operators when they die and you try to switch to good combos. But now, I'm going to teach you guys extra techniques and ways to make that productivity so much higher so that you always get the highest amount of resource that your account can pump out. This is basically the next 5,000 to 10,000 of resources every day, whether it's LMD or EXP, that you might be able to add to your account. Second best concept. Let's assume that you log in more than 2 times a day so that your capacity doesn't cap, right? And of course, like we said, productivity is most important. The idea of second best is that you want to make sure that while you are using the best combo that is already in your factory, for example, like over here, we've got Conviction and Feeder, which adds 35 each, and then after this, I've got Castle Tree, which adds 30. Once this combo goes down, you still want high productivity. You want to make sure that this is the second highest possible group of people that you might be able to use. This particular factory. I've got Feeder, I've got Conviction, and both of them add by 35%. Let's say these two have ran out of morale. Now let's scroll through everyone here and see who's the next best to replace. So for example, if I add Wildmane and Sgene and we put them in, the productivity is only 0.3. Very, very small, right? Maybe we put Fartooth and Asbestos for whatever reason. The capacity is plus 0.5. Okay, it's better. Then you want to keep doing this until you can find the best possible combo that you own in your account. So for example, we'll put Vigna and Castle Tree, and it becomes plus 0.6, which is pretty high. It's quite close to the previous number that we had, which was plus 0.7. So this can be a good replacement. This can be a good second best that you replace once my Conviction and my Feeder are down. It applies to all the other places as well. As soon as maybe this goes down, what is my second best for my Rhinelet combo? In my own account, my own second best that I've identified is the Mizuki combo, because this literally produces the same amount. It's also plus 0.9. So this makes it very easy. If one goes down, I replace it with another combo that literally gives me the same best amount. So second best concept is very, very simple to understand. Now let's move on to the idea of maintain maximum. So your operators are working within your base. After 24 hours, they are dead. And like we said at the very start of the video, when operators are dead, you will just add 0% of EXP, which the factory will still work, just no boost. Then let's identify this as the second best, right? We've got the Vigna, Shirayuki, and Frostleaf, who all adds 30%. So that's why it's a plus 90%. Then after 24 hours, this group is dead, and then after we shift and we bring back the Conviction, Feeder, and Castle Tree. But one thing that you kind of need to notice here is you spend a lot of time on this 90% EXP, when most likely somewhere in the middle of this point in time, these three operators would have fully recovered their morale, and then afterwards you can simply just put them back in, right? And you can enjoy the 100% EXP for an even longer duration. So the idea of maintain maximum is that you simply make the second best group of operators work for a shorter period of time. Like, let's assume that these three operators takes only 8 hours to recover themselves. As soon as they're fully recovered, you switch the second best out so that you always have your best ones in. This way, you're always making sure that the productivity is at its utmost best. And instead of trying to switch your operators as soon as they're dead, you try to give a bit of leeway, like for example 23 hours, and that way you won't suddenly have the 0% where there is no improved boost. So maintain maximum, also another very simple concept to understand. Here's a question at hand. What's the longest amount of time that an operator can work in a facility? Just now we did the whole midnight catapult thing where you see 80 hours. But in this scenario, let's assume that you place an operator with no morale reduction. So it's a clean operator, you place them in the factory or a trading post. How long can they work for? So let's take an example of this trading post over here. And we're going to place 3 particular operators. We'll just be using Embryo, Moose, and Fang. And remember that the trading post, the amount of time remaining is irrespective of the orders, how long they take, or the capacity. It's just how long the operators can work for. You notice over here it writes that it's 26 hours, which is kind of breaking what a lot of you understand, because most of you know that, hey, 24 morale, so shouldn't it be 1 morale per hour? The thing is that when you place operators into any facility, let's just remove these operators here, like let's just leave an embryo. You notice that the morale consumed per hour is just 1, so it does become that embryo can only work for 24 hours. But when I start to place a few more people, like I will place in a Fang, you notice there's a minus 0.05, but Fang doesn't have any morale reduction skill. So whether it's the trading post or the factory, there's always this base reduction, whereby when you pair operators or put them into triplets, for every extra operator, there's a minus 0.05. So this actually alters the amount of time that your operators can work for in a facility. And now if we go back into here and I just place in our final operator, that's kind of why it turned from 24 hours to 26. Now, even better, right now, my control center is empty. I completely empty it just to demonstrate to you guys the importance of a control center. A lot of you love to run the Rainbow Six comp, right? You love to do this and then afterwards you just place one random person. But I don't think you seem to understand how significant this comp is, because this composition has allowed the morale reduction to not just be minus 0.1, but now it's minus 0.25. Is it because of the Rainbow Six skills? We don't know, but notice how it jumped all the way up to 36 hours or even 37 hours, which is pretty damn long. Now, this is not because of the Rainbow Six Siege comp, but instead, for any 5 operators that you place into here, they will give a morale reduction. So for example, I'll slowly place people in. Let's place Kelsey and Swire. So there's 2 of them, right? These 2 have allowed our dear trading post here to have an additional minus 0.1. And then if I just place a few more people into the control center, let's not use control center operators, let's just go random, like this Blaze, Thorns, and Silver Ash that I have here. Then we go back into the trading post. You notice there's still a minus 0.25, which extended their number of working hours to just about the same as the Rainbow Six Siege comp. So basically, it's very important to always station your operators here, because this allows your operators in the other facilities to work for longer. And by doing that, you can rotate much fewer time, making it so much simpler for you guys. So first thing to understand from this question is we're doing this because we want our best combo to work in the base for as long as possible. Then, we also want our best combo to recover as fast as possible. So, how long does it take for an operator to fully recover morale? Then this comes with the question of what is your dormitory level, but that doesn't really matter because no matter what it is, again, there is a way to figure that out. So for example, we come into here and I've placed my Ratalos and my Terra. In order to see how long it takes for them to recover, you simply look at the time here. It says 5 hours left, it says 4 hours left. We can put a very dead composition. So for example, I'm just going to remove these 2 and I'm just going to add in my Mizuki and Vanilla. And you can see it takes 11 hours for them in order to recover. So use this as the way to tell how long your best combo needs to take to recover, and then you can rotate them. Of course, you don't have to be so strict such that you log in the moment your best combo is done. Try to find a way to kind of align as many operators as possible so that your rotation isn't so complicated. You make it easy for yourself. Use these numbers to plan your base as you wish. Assuming that you've done all the steps correctly, the whole idea of maintain maximum will become maybe your best combo might end up working for 34 hours. And then afterwards, you put them to rest and then you recover them for 6 hours. That just reminded me that I have to show you guys morale recovery skills. If you look over here, Passenger has a recovery time of 8 hours. Let's play someone else who can give some good benefits. For example, Siege that recovers everyone faster. So that 8 hours time, you notice how it kind of dropped to 7 hours. So that's the point of dormitory recovery skill operators. If you care so much about making your best combo recover super fast, then you can use some of your best base skills in order to send them back to working even quicker. So yeah, you can maybe reduce it all the way to 6 hours, and then afterwards, you make your best combo for 34 hours again. This way, you're really maximizing the productivity that you can get. Now, finally, this is the hardest concept. The first 2 are simple to understand. Whether you want to apply, that's up to you. This one, I don't like this. I'm not a big fan, and you'll understand why in a bit. So let's take that you have these 7 operators, right? And these are the EXP boosts that they can provide. These first 2 are of course like the best. You want them in the base as long as possible. Then afterwards you have your second best, where these add by 30%. The good, the not so bad, it's only a 5% difference, but the technically less appreciated. And then you have those that are even lower, like 25%, 15%. What if you run into a problem where you don't have every single operator listed here? Like for example, maybe you don't have E1 Vigna, right? Or you don't have E1 Frostleaf. You kind of have fewer options, and this becomes a problem where you don't have a very good second best. Your next second best can be half of your first best. So we look at this particular drawings that I've done, right? There's Feeder, there's Conviction, there's Castle. And then this is the ideal second best, right? Maybe you switch to a Steward, a Shiryuki, and a Frostleaf, which is about a 10% difference. But we run into this problem where you do not have a Frostleaf. You have a Steward, but you don't have a Frostleaf. And these are the only 5 operators you have in your account. How do you then maximize productivity when you don't have a second full set of a combo? You do what we call staggering. Instead of rotating your operators when they die or when they fully recover and whatnot, you kind of split the rotation. So you don't rotate all 3 at once, you rotate them once at a time. If let's say your operators can work for a total of 30 hours, for example, in the first 10 hours of a certain shift, maybe you move out one of your particular operators. Like for example, okay, Feeder, go into the dorm, I'm going to replace it with the second best for you, which the second best for her is Shiryuki, right? Then you keep Conviction and Castle in. So you notice that the total productivity here is a plus 100, and then here it's a plus 95. In the next 10 hours, so you just went from 10 hours to 20 hours, right? Then you start to say, oh, hey, Feeder is fully recovered. I need someone to shift out. Okay, Conviction, get out. Shift it for Feeder. And you realize that you kind of still maintain it at plus 95. Okay, pretty cool. Then afterwards you go into 30 hours and you start to realize that your Castle is already dying. Castle is about to approach the end of his morale. So you start to say, okay, Castle, rotate out. And by then, your Conviction will probably be done recovering, and then you can switch. And you realize you kind of come back to this plus 100. So the way that this works is you try to keep your highest productivity as high as possible, and you're doing this with way fewer operators. By doing so, this is basically, again, you're maximizing productivity. This is fantastic for new players, because for new players, you don't have a lot of operators. You're probably missing so many of these good things. If let's say you only have 4 operators, you realize how staggering kind of benefits. You could also do it with 5. Sometimes you don't have to rotate 1 operator at a time. You could maybe rotate 2 at a time, depending on how you do it. But the reason why I don't really like this technique is it's very micromanaging. It's super stressful to do this. And it's quite tiring to watch over the individual morales as compared to, oh, it's so simple if you have 2 combos and you just swap the second best. But again, this is applicable even for late game players. If your second best is way weaker than your first best, then you might want to consider a bit of a staggering idea. So we compare all the methods that we showed just now. We talk about second best, maintain maximum, and staggering. For veterans, those of you who are very, very long time players in the game, this has a huge benefit. Like if you've never cared about this and you start caring about it now, you're gonna get a huge boost, because when you can identify 2 of your best combos, you're bringing about big numbers into your base. But for new players, second best is still important. You need it because it kind of follows into the next few methods. But the boost is a bit small, because you can realize that your first combo maybe is plus 90%. Your second combo can be as bad as plus 30%, which is not that wonderful. Then of course, once you go into the idea of maintain maximum, then you can kind of see better gains. Now for veterans, the gains is a bit smaller, because you can see how the difference here, like for example, you have these 2 combos, it's only a 20% difference. It doesn't hurt that much if you rotate both combos every 24 hours. You still do benefit a lot if you let this group work for as long as possible, right? And then this group for as short as possible. But then for new players, this is big, right? You've got a 60% difference that's over here. And imagine you put much fewer hours here and much more hours here, right? You can see that the benefit is booming. Then if you talk about staggering becomes very like, why would veterans do it? If you have a whole big pool of base operators, there's not much point to stagger. You might be staggering between a difference of only 10%, which for some of you don't think that's a big enough advantage to do something this micromanaging. Then for new players, unfortunate, but if you do apply this technique, it's super good for your account, because instead of going with a 90 to 30, you might be hovering somewhere between the 90 to 70 and maintaining this kind of range for as long as possible. So basically, this is the whole 3 concepts of rotations. Apply this as much as you want into your account, choose which ones you want to take in, and then you can rotate even better to get more resources. In summary, if you want big resources, choose how much micromanagement that you want. The easiest way to remember how to do so is this particular statement. You want to maintain highest productivity for the longest period of time. This is all you need to remember, and that's how you can understand like all the little hard concepts that happen in front. If you need to take a break now, go and take a break, because we just went through what might be another 20 minutes. We're going to enter the hardest part, which is base layout, the biggest argument that keeps happening in the Arknight space. I'm going to suppose you're ready now, so let's go.